Good morning, beloveds. It is a dark and stormy day, which it's not. It's dark. Looks like the cloud cover pretty much covers us, and it looks like it did rain a little bit. It's not raining now, but when we walked out the door, it was like, whoa, fall. I mean, when you think fall and 73 degrees, but still, it was a nice change to walk out, and there was a cool breeze, and it was cool, and so we got a good walk in. And there were a couple of times where I think it was just the wind in the trees knocking the water out of the trees, but I was like, oh, are we gonna make it home, or are we gonna get soaked? So it could be an interesting day today with the weather, but it is September 10th. It is Thursday. And our title is I Stay Open to the Present, all right, take two. I stay open to the presence of Spirit everywhere. The world is mine and the fullness thereof. And that is from SOM. I honestly can't see that. Psalm 50:12. Yes, I wear bifocal. Well, actually, I wear trifocals, apparently. And the print on the Bible quote is really small. So, all right. Let's get into this. The Spirit of God, which is life, is present everywhere. Like the air we breathe, it presses against us. On the mountaintop, in the valley, in the desert, and in the ocean, there is no place where life is not. Therefore, in whatever direction we move in God. In God we live, move, and have our being. God is one undivided and indivisible wholeness, one divine and spiritual presence, one universal and all-encompassing person. Perhaps it is a little difficult for us to understand the meaning of such an all-inclusive person, but the very fact that we are personalities presupposes such a conclusion. Our endeavor, then, is not so much to find God, to find the divine source of our personal being, as it is to become acquainted with God. Today, I consciously commune with the Spirit. I know that it presses against me and flows through me. I endeavor to feel this presence as a living reality in my life. Knowing that the divine presence is in everyone, I sense that Spirit in everyone I meet. I do my best to respond to this Spirit, seeing it everywhere. I keep my consciousness open and alert that I may better understand the union of all life with its pure and perfect source. All right. So he was pretty clear about the content with his title. I stay open to the presence of Spirit everywhere. And that is definitely one of the things that Science of Mind asks of us. It asks of us to basically, as soon as we open our eyes, to realize that what we are looking at, or who we are looking at, is made of the divine substance, the divine source. It is Spirit in form, or they are Spirit in form. Whether they recognize it or not, it is our job to recognize that they are Spirit in form. Especially because if we can hold the consciousness that they are Spirit in form, it gives them the opportunity to recognize it for themselves. We're holding the space for them to recognize it themselves. Sometimes that's the best treatment that you can do for someone when they are struggling. I'll use the word struggling. Is to treat for them to know that they are Spirit in form. And all of the gifts that come with that knowledge. Because if we're all one, then if I know that for you, I know that for you until you can know it for yourself. That's the way it works. So The Spirit of God, which is life, is present everywhere. Like the air we breathe, it presses against us. And he's quoted that before. It presses against us. So either that's a phrase he really likes, or it could be, he could be quoting somebody. Ernest is really good about quoting people and not giving us sources. It may be worth looking into if you have a research bent to you. On the mountaintop, in the valley, in the desert, in the ocean. And really, honestly, if you go out and look in science, he's right. There are very few places, if any, where there is not some kind of life. In the depths of the ocean, we really haven't been down too much, but even where we've been, we've seen life. And in the hottest places, there's life. There's almost always at least a bacterium that survives. So there's always life. Which is why, just that statement alone is why I'm like, I look at the vastness of the universe and go, we are not alone. Frankly, I think it's a bit egotistical of us to think that we're the only place in the universe where life has happened. So life literally is everywhere. Everywhere. It just may not be a form that we, one, can see if it's on a bacterium level, or two, recognize. So it's our job to start recognizing life and consciousness and that presence wherever we are, whatever we're looking at. There is no place where life is not. Therefore, in whatever direction we move in God. Which is an interesting way to say that. Whatsoever direction we move in God. So, literally, the planet that we are standing on is God. Let that blow your mind for a minute. The planet that the planet that we live on is God, because it's made of God's stuff. Which gives me an environmental, we have a responsibility to take care of it. Which is, I believe both the Buddhists and the Muslims have an environmental bent. It just popped right out of my head. Dr. Frager taught the class on Islam, and there's a real environmental undertone too, and I can't it'll come back. Okay. So, we move in God. In God we live, move, and have our being. We are constantly surrounded by spirit. And we are spirit. There's nowhere spirit is not. God is one undivided and indivisible wholeness, one divine and spiritual presence, one universal and all-encompassing person. And as a math person, that's hard. It's undivided and indivisible, and yet we have all these little units running around. So it's like, but that's where we go back to. It's all one. It's all one. Perhaps it is a little difficult for us to understand the meaning of such an all-inclusive person. And he says it right there. It's hard for us to understand because we're limited. We are limited by the material form. So we're left with this because we are in a finite form. The infinite is hard for us to grasp. And I admit it is, but it's glorious to try. It's glorious to try to think that, and it's also glorious to see that we are all little individual units, but we are part of a greater whole that we cannot be divided from. We're still, even though we look separate, we're not. We have this to us invisible connection to everything and everyone around us that is truly indivisible, undividable, And yet we run around as these little separate beings. These little individual units. And it just, if you think too hard about it, it just makes your mind go, it blows your mind. It blows your mind. And oh yeah, no, that the science classes, yes, the vastness of God. I completely agree with you, Cleopatra. Okay, so it's a little difficult for us to understand the meaning of such an all-inclusive person, but the very fact that we are personalities presupposes such a conclusion. Basically, if it didn't exist, we couldn't exist. So this all-inclusive person exists, which then allows us to break down into all the little sparks that we are. That's one of the reasons why I like the Hindu mythology so much, because the Hindu mythology basically said, okay, we are incapable of encompassing the idea of God in one. So what we do is we interact with the facet of God that we need at the time. And because we are limited, then we are going to give that particular facet of the one undivided God, Brahma, and even naming it still limits it. But I need to deal with this one particular facet, so I'm going to give it a name so that I can interact with it, with the understanding that this particular God that I am interacting with is not really a separate God, it's just a face of the one. And that's what I loved about that's what I love about the Hindu mythology. It's like, no, there's one God, but I, as a limited mortal being, am incapable of interacting with the entirety, the indivisible part of it. So I'm going to pull out this one little aspect, and this is what I need right now. And this is the way I have to do it. And I recognize that this is me limiting my interaction with God to a level that I can understand. Because for me to interact with the indivisible whole would blow my mortal mind. Which may not be a bad thing. All right. Our endeavor then is not so much to find God. It's all around us. To discover, so our endeavor then is not so much to find God or to discover the divine source of our personal being, as it is to become acquainted with God. It's like, okay, let me learn all of the different parts of God. All of the different parts of God that I am capable of interacting with in my life. Let me learn that. I can't learn the whole thing in this form. Let me learn what I can. And then there will come a time when I will go back to the indivisible whole. I will resubmerge into that, and then I will have my mind blown on a level that I can't even comprehend in this lifetime. Today I consciously commune with the Spirit. I know that it presses against me and flows through me. I endeavor to feel this presence as a living reality in my life. I endeavor to feel this as a living reality in my life. And that kind of goes back to what we were doing yesterday, where we were talking about thoughts and feelings. So now I'm endeavoring to feel this presence in my life, this guiding presence in my life, and align my thoughts with that. Knowing that this divine presence is in everyone, I sense that Spirit in everyone I meet. That's where I can hold the space. It's like, I meet you, and whatever it is that you are currently enacting in your life, I'm going to look at you and know that you are Spirit. Know that you are a divine splinter of that Spirit, a divine spark of that Spirit. I'm going to know that. Now, that also means that if you are not enacting this divine life in a safe way for me, I'm going to know this about you, but I'm going to know it from a distance. Okay? You have the right to know the divine. You have the responsibility to know the divine about everybody, but you have the responsibility of taking care of yourself. So feel free to know that divineness of the about somebody from a distance, okay? Do not at every time take this as I'm going to be, I'm going to open myself up and love everybody. Yeah, you can do that. But you are allowed to do it from a distance. Take care of yourself. Take care of yourself. I always want to stress that. It's like I don't want to get into that. And I don't use the word hippy dippy. I don't want to get into that hippy dippy, love everybody. I can love you back into. No, that's your job. I'm not going to love you back into spirit. That is your job to love you back into spirit. But I'm going to, from a place of safety for me, I'm going to love you. I will love you from here, but I will boundaries. I will keep my boundaries. Okay. I don't ever want anybody to take this spiritual stuff and put themselves in danger trying to save someone. Your responsibility is to save you. Everybody else is responsible for saving themselves. We are responsible for offering the help to others that we can within reason. And then we have to let them do it themselves. This is what I'm trying to say. Occasionally I get a little confused in my message, so this is what I'm trying to tell you. All right. I do my best to respond to the Spirit, seeing it everywhere. I keep my consciousness open and alert that I may better understand the union of all life with its pure and perfect source. And so that's where our work is. Our work is to keep our consciousness open and alert, to keep focused on spirit, to recognize spirit in all of its many and glorious forms, to recognize it in its indivisible and undivided whole, and to see it in its multitude. And hold that. So I'm going to go back for the mission. I'm going to go back to the second paragraph, the last line. Our endeavor, so our mission, should we choose to accept it today, is to become acquainted with God in all of the glorious forms that it embodies in the material world. To recognize when we meet people that they are, we use the word children of God, but that's the God Spirit flowing through them. That is Spirit flowing through them. That they are that divine splinter, that divine spark. The divine spark I got from Gnosticism. That's where that comes from, just in case you're curious. So to recognize and to get to know God in all of the multitude of forms that God shows up in, to recognize that life is everywhere, spirit is everywhere, there is nowhere that spirit is not, and to get to know it on a level that we haven't in the past, and that's going to require us to open our minds and to open our hearts, and that is going to require a deep dive into, I hadn't thought about that before. It is going to require us to allow God to blow our minds. To be stunned by the amazingness of spirit and what spirit has wrought within our lives. A little more often than we are. So, and I don't know what that looks like. I don't. So it will be a grand experiment, and most likely a life-changing one. If you remember the pictures where you had to unfocus your eyes to see the picture, that's what I'm asking you to do. I'm asking you to focus and unfocus at the same time. Unfocus so that you can relax what you thought everything around you was. allowing you to focus on that being spirit. Because we have been taught a certain thing, and so we need to unfocus from that. And when we unfocus from that, spirit will sharpen our focus. And that's it. So I'm going to encourage you to do something loving for yourself, do something kind for yourself, do something compassionate for yourself. Right now, today would be a fantastic day to open the windows for probably about an hour, and allow that breeze to come in. Allow that fresh air to come in. Allow that fresh perspective to come in. And allow the windows of your soul to open, and allow that breath of heaven to come in to remind you of that undivided and indivisible God all around us all the time. That God that is in us, as us, through us, as it is everyone and everything around us. To allow our minds to be blown by the fact that everything and everyone that we touch is spirit. It's spirit looking back at us. So, all right. That is it. Remember that you are a beloved child of God in whom God is well pleased. Now and always. And I will be back with you. Reverend David will be on around 5 p.m. today on Facebook Live with you. I will be back at 9 a.m. tomorrow. And do what you need to do to make it a fantastic day. Do something that engages your mind and your body. And get acquainted with God today. Bye, beloveds.